Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet B Rayne. My guest today is Amy Marohn. Over a decade ago, Amy became very sick from a mysterious condition of unknown origin. It took 5 years to get to a diagnosis, and by this point, she had missed the ultimate window of time whereby mainstream interventions may have contained or even completely reversed her illness. Fast forward to a near-death experience that inspired Amy to live more intentionally while simultaneously opening her spiritual pathways to higher frequency realms. The concept of hypnosis came through her rather than from her, and with every passing season since the opening of her practice, enhanced energies and techniques continue to reveal themselves. Amy experienced these interventions firsthand as she uses them to restore her body and mind to a state of quietude, which in turn set her soul on fire to help others heal from within. A 25-year history in the field of rehabilitation has served as the perfect foundation and training ground for discovering Amy's true calling, which is far more intuitive and mystically driven. She helps light worker entrepreneurs and business leaders release unproductive patterns and recalibrate to the frequency of authentic self. So let's just dive in. That's a lot of information. Sounds like a lot of history too, right? When you look
Lot of
back
history,
on it.
Violet. Yes, lots of history there.
A lot of history. So, in your near-death experience, I love talking to people about this
Mhm.
because a lot of people don't understand, but a lot of people, what I've noticed that have had near-death experiences have similar experiences as others without realizing it. There's some
Mhm.
common patterns. So, talk
Mhm.
to us. I'm curious about your near-death experience, what that was like for you, and coming back, what was that like for you?
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, mine was a little bit different from the way in which other people commonly experience near-death experiences, in that, I wasn't in the hospital. I wasn't experiencing an event like a heart attack, nor was I in surgery, as is the case with so many. I was actually at home, and I was alone, and I had been struggling for a long time with a dysregulated autoimmune system and what's called dysautonomia, where the entire autonomic nervous system goes haywire. So lots of years of trips to the ER with some strange heart issues and infections that seemed resistant to antibiotics. So I mean, the point at which this near death experience happened, I had already been to see an expert in Michigan. I had been traveling back and forth to see this doctor for 10 months. I failed his protocol, as you had mentioned in the introduction, threw my hands up in the air and said, God, either take me or heal me, but don't leave me this way. And so, careful what you wish for, because shortly thereafter, sometime during the course of sleep, my soul left my body. I crossed what I refer to as another threshold or higher frequency. And my experience that I had was received clairaudiently and clairsentiently. And what I mean by that is it was less the visual cues and more that my being was transmitted information, and more specifically, a question. And I refer to these energies as the voice because I was asked if I was ready to leave the earth plane. And the way that I was able to formulate an informed decision was in that moment, I was downloaded the cumulative impact that my early passing would have on my son, who at the time would have been about 9 years old. And I felt grief and sadness, and I felt his confusion and inner angst and those deep, heavy feelings of abandonment. And in that moment, however long that experience lasted, because I really don't know, I knew then that I wasn't done with my work here on the earth plane. And in that time that lapsed, I remember making a conscious choice to come back. Then the voice said, if we send you back, you will live more intentionally. I had no idea what that meant. But I knew that whatever these energies were surrounding me, I was being divinely guided. So my soul went back into my body. It just felt like it came back as quickly as it left. And I remember waking up thinking, did that just happen? Flicked on the light, feet hit the ground. It took me many, many days, even weeks and months to unpack what had happened. But I will tell you, in the days, weeks, and months to follow, I had an unwavering understanding of divine intervention, which changed my entire life moving forward. The voice then told me within days that I would be going back to school. And a few days later, I was told I would follow the training path of a hypnotist. And then I knew there was something really shifting in my heart and in my life, because this was not a spontaneous healing. I still felt, the impact of this rare autoimmune disease moving through me, creating chronic fatigue, chronic pain, all the things. And even though, my human side doubted whether or not I would be able to handle retraining and even opening a business of this nature, I never even questioned this voice. And so I followed the path of this training, opened up my business, and here I am 10 years later.
I love it. I love it. So how has hypnosis helped you and your clients? Excuse me.
Sure. Well, in the beginning, I started this business probably much like any other hypnotist studying a new trade. What's interesting, I think, about my story, Violet, is that I never knew a hypnotist. I had never been to see a hypnotist. And I never even before this near-death experience, even randomly Googled, what is the training involved? What does a hypnotist do? I mean, I knew just about what mainstream society knew about hypnosis, and that's that people go there, to quit smoking or to lose weight. But I had no idea how I was going to use this in my practice. My background was rehabilitation counseling. I had worked in pain management centers, I had worked in mental health and addictions and physical rehab. So it made a degree of sense, the path I was on. But in the very beginning, I was following kind of, I call it the script based hypnosis, the one size fits all approach, where anybody comes to me with any issue, and here's how we handle the smokers, and here's how we handle weight loss, and here's how we handle anxiety or phobias. But little did I know, from the very first encounter with my very first client, that it was so much more expansive, that hypnosis would just be, the platform or the launch pad for all the other things that would start to move through me. And what I mean by that, Violet, is I could feel energies from the etheric realm coming through me to aid me. So energy was moving through me to help my clients, in this altered state, be able to release things, patterns, traumas from the past. Little did I know that the energies moving through me would also help my clients recalibrate, and balance the energies within, in greater alignment with, I call it the higher self or divine self. And little did I know that that same voice that had guided me through my near-death experiences and the seasons to follow, would also be planting seeds of wisdom in my mind to help guide my sessions, to ask the deeper questions, or send signals through my body that would help me know, um, you know, what topics or what memories, to lean into that would help my client. I call it self-heal, because I believe all healing is self-healing. And so, week after week, month after month, year after year, I just call it generically, spirit just started weaving in all these other tools and all of these other, frameworks or modalities into hypnosis, so that about halfway into my work, at about year 5, I started recognizing a lot of the work I do is more metaphysical healing, and that I really began to understand myself as a spiritual hypnosis. And my job then became helping my clients see themselves through a more spiritual lens, to understand who they are as a soul and what their mission is here on the earth plane.
I love that. I love that. You talk about mediumship coming in too, being able to see that. Share some of that wisdom with us on how mediumship started coming in for you.
Absolutely. Well, I want to make it clear to our listeners and viewers, we are all mediums. All of us have incredible abilities to allow these higher frequency energies to move through us. And it doesn't require that you carry the title of medium. It doesn't require that you work in alternative healing arts and, Reiki, or, as a medium. It just requires the intention of bringing light, healing, and deeper soul wisdom into whatever respective communities you're called to serve. And it can even be done informally. I've had many, many clients over the years who work in what we would consider more mainstream professions, like, they might be a regional manager of a supermarket, or they might, be a lead, running a department within an IT company. And there's something in their energetic imprint that is very helper healer, humble servant oriented. In the book, and we'll talk about this in a little while, Whispers Beyond the Veil, Channel Teachings Inspired by the Spirit World gets into that. But what I can tell you is I do believe that this connection with divine source didn't begin with my near-death experience, that I felt these energies way back into my childhood. At a very young age, I didn't know it at the time, but I felt energies moving through me to create music. And at 8, 9, 10 years old, I would, with very little background or training in music, I would sit down at my family's piano, and this music would just come through me. And it wasn't until many years later that I understood that as this, I call it the sacred dialogue between my heart and the etheric realm, to bring through healing energies in the form of melodies and music. And even as a child, I felt very, I suppose my teachers would have considered me to be very distracted while the other kids were, learning science and math. I was in this kind of dream sequence thinking about, running orphanages in Africa, and all the ways that I could bring more love into the world. So, but when I had this, so I always did feel this connection and this voice, or this deep inclination to meditate or pray or go into these deeper states. I always felt very empathic and very connected to the energies around me and moving through me. But I must say, it wasn't until my near-death experience that the voice spoke to me with such conviction and such power that I do believe it really did open up, new spiritual pathways. And I guess I would call it a clearer channel to be able to bring through those energies or wisdoms or ideas from the etheric realm. So, how did this, play out in the course of my, spiritual hypnosis world? Again, I just started weaving in what was coming through from spirit. And then people who were moving through grief and loss, loss of a loved one, whether it be a spouse or a child or a best friend, people started just finding me. And it was sort of an organic flow of information. I really only started putting myself out there as a medium within the last, formally within the last, I would say, maybe 3 to 5 years. So I had always used it, but I didn't really articulate my use of this as a tool until the last handful of years, where it became so apparent that that was going to be an ever-present component of what I do in the work with my clients.
Let's talk about your books since we have a little bit of time left. Share with us about your books and what we can find in those.
Absolutely. I truly believe, as light workers, we are always growing and evolving and becoming. I had another podcast host ask me, Amy, are we shifting dimensions? And I said, absolutely, Vialet. We are always, able to access higher frequency energies. So why do I share that? I share that because, and it does tie into this book. Last spring, I went to a mediumship convention, And I spent almost a week completely surrounded by other high frequency beings who work in, as mediumships and psychics and in various forms of the healing arts. And during a mediumship exchange with a colleague of mine, something incredible happened. I can hardly verbalize it, but I seem to have, released something and assimilated into, a higher realm or a higher frequency. Because when I returned from that trip, that evening, I returned on a Sunday. In the middle of the night, that Sunday at about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened and another voice came forward. And it was the voice of a medium who had passed not all too long ago, who began to download lots of wisdom. What's interesting about this story is I didn't know this medium during her life, but the colleague I did the healing exchange work with, had studied under her for 3 years before her passing, which I think is so interesting. And I never even knew of this medium who I channeled to write this book until she came to me that evening. I didn't know that her intention was to help me write a book. It took days of getting downloads and wanting to capture it on my computer before I recognized, I'm getting downloads, but also as I'm sitting down to write at my computer, it becomes a process of automatic writing where the spirit is blending with me to carry out a message. So what I can tell you in the writing of this book, it is a spiritual curriculum. And it is the purpose of this book is to help other light workers connect with the most authentic version of themselves. So each chapter has a lesson or a teaching followed by journal prompts that help people be able to release old patterns and recalibrate to the frequency of the higher self. So it's a beautiful self-exploration tool. It's a beautiful tool that people can use in spiritual workshops or spiritual book clubs.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What's the name of the book?
Sure, it's called, and you'll see I have all these sticky notes because I'm actually teaching a course now from this book. It's called Whispers Beyond the Veil, Channel Teachings Inspired by the Spirit World. And it's on Amazon, both in Kindle and hard copy. And there's also a companion journal, The Whispers Within. And that's just in case people are wanting to record their thoughts for personal reflection and spiritual workshop facilitators. So it was funny when I just finished this book, Spirit indicated, hey, we're not done. You really need to do this to complete the, to help people be able to record, their ideas and thoughts and bring it to workshops or reflect back on it through their growth and evolution journey.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Sure.
Share with us a little bit. I'll have your website up there, but what are some things that people could connect with you and work with you directly on?
Absolutely. Well, people can, the easiest place for people to find me is my website, sensoriumhypnosis.com. But people generally, they reach out to me for all different reasons in terms of wanting to release patterns or behaviors. As of late, I've been working with more and more business owners and business leaders who are dealing with, usually the first point of entry is they're moving through a major life transition. That could be, anything from, divorce, struggling with, moving through a health storm, autoimmune disease, just any kind of chronic pain or chronic health issues that are, forcing them to slow down and live differently. Also, it could be, I'm seeing a lot of people in my age bracket who are now struggling with caregiving of aging parents, and are also trying to balance that with some of the stress and challenges of running a business or being in a leadership position. And so most of the people who come to see me these days are toggling between those two worlds, and they're needing or wanting some spiritual guidance and healing work.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for taking the time today to share your story. Tell us about your book and the things that you offer. It's been a great conversation. I've really appreciated you taking the time today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation and provide this wonderful platform. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And those that are listening, thank you for taking the time to check it out. I hope that you'll comment, follow us on your favorite channels, and like us. I hope that you have a sacred and magical week, and that we will see you here again soon on this channel. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.